Good evening. My name is Devin and you're watching WHAP Live at 5. Tonight we have special segments about ISIS, refugees, healthcare, and body image issues. First up tonight we have Harley Rand, Spices Vices specialist, joining us.
Hello, Devin.
Hi, Harley. Welcome to WHAP Live at 5. So my question is, what is ISIS and what are their goals?
Well, ISIS is a terrorist organization, and their goal is to establish a caliphate, which is basically having political power over their territory and becoming the leaders of the Islamic State. They have political control of the area and the people, which they would have to topple both the Syrian and Iraqi governments to have complete political control, but they also tax as if they do rule over the people. ISIS has destroyed many monuments and artifacts in their terrorist activities. According to CNN.com, ISIS has caused irreparable damage to Syria's cultural heritage, as writers said, and it's crucial that the digging and smuggling of antiques be stopped because Syria's history is critical in helping the people of Syria reconnect with the symbols that unite them across religious and political lines. CNN.com also reports ISIS cuts off the heads of statues and leaves or destroys the rest of them because the head of the statue is the most valuable. By doing this, they are destroying the cultural heritage of the people in the area.
So Harley, how does ISIS make their money?
Well, thank you, Devin. That's a great question. ISIS runs its organization as a business. They bring in money for their operations through several channels. According to CNN.com, the most profitable of their channels is their practice of oil smuggling. They make $1 to $2 million a day through smuggling and selling oils to those still in the territory. The reason that non-sympathizers buy oil from ISIS, a terrorist organization, is because oil prices are already so high and that's their last option. Another way that ISIS profits is through the sale of the priceless heads off monuments, as I already stated, and they also gain capital by extortion. They hold citizens of foreign countries and in some cases wealthy businesses leaders for ransom for their government or their business to pay, and then they enforce taxes and tolls upon the people within the territory they operate under.
So how does Islamophobia factor into all of this?
Well, Islamophobia is a relatively new word referring to discrimination against or hostility toward those of the Islamic faith. Islamophobia in America has spiked since 9/11 and is on the rise with every terror attack by a Muslim. This adds a deeper level to the subject of terrorism because terrorism seems to be a double-edged sword. While terrorists justify themselves through their religion, non-terrorists of the same religion are framed as a threat by their appearance or religious affiliation by those affected by terrorists. Muslims are sometimes targeted for their religious identity, and in the land of First Amendment rights, where everyone has the right to believe in any religion, Muslims are judged based on the actions of a select few, not on their individual.
Now, Jenna Feldhusen with the weather.
Thanks, Devin. This week's going to start out with Sunday of 42 degrees and a chance of rain, and then on to Monday, we're going to have storms for most of the Monday and Tuesday. And then we're going to get into a little bit warmer or more sunny weather. It's not technically warm. The temperature's dropping down to 40 degrees. And the same for Thursday, basically. And then Friday.
I'm going to go out to the field and talk about refugees. Under the 1951 UN Convention relating to the status of refugees, a refugee is a person fleeing being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, war, violence, or membership of a particular social group or political opinion. Worldwide, there are approximately 64 million people who are displaced or of concern, and almost 50% of these are Muslim. Less than 0.1% of these people will have the chance to restart their lives. As of 2015, we are in a global all-time high for the number of refugees, coming mainly from politically torn countries like Somalia, Afghanistan, and Syria. Somali refugees come from decreasing food stocks, drought, and overall terrorism. According to Refugees.org, Afghani refugees flee from the factions that have plagued Afghanistan since 1989, destroying numerous cities and towns. The world has their eyes primarily on Syrian refugees, who are fleeing from the civil war in their country and the occupation of the Islamic State. Although refugees are not a new concept, they're fairly new globally after the World Wars. After World War I, millions were displaced from Europe and Asia. The League of Nations Office of High Commissioner for Refugees, established in 1921 for these refugees, and handed out over 450,000 passports. Afterwards, they assisted many others in post-war resettlement, like over 500,000 Turks from Greece to Turkey and 1.4 million Russians fleeing the Russian Revolution. After World War II, in the 1930s to 40s, many Jews left Germany to places like the United Kingdom, North America, Shanghai, and China. Although refugees are not a new concept, they're fairly new globally after the World Wars. After World War I, millions were displaced from Europe and Asia. The League of Nations Office of High Commissioner for Refugees, established in 1921 for these refugees, and handed out over 450 passports. Afterwards, they assisted many others in post-war resettlement, like over 500,000 Turks from Greece to Turkey and 1.4 million Russians fleeing the Russian Revolution. After World War II, in the 1930s to 40s, many Jews left Germany to places like the United Kingdom, North America, and China. Many people didn't want to accept them, though, because of the worldwide economic Great Depression. Thousands of refugees died during World War II due to this. After the World Wars, the United Nations was formed, and assisting refugees was high on their priorities list. The UN now encourages countries to admit refugees. As people in the Middle East and North Africa began to rise as powerful terrorist and paramilitary groups in the 21st century, another major refugee crisis has begun. This includes the Arab Spring uprisings, the Syrian Civil War, and groups regionally like the Islamic State. Syria is where most of the world's refugees come from today. As their country still continues to be split in wage warfare against each other, the numbers will continue to rise. Most of these refugees find refuge in Turkey, but they also primarily relocate into European and Asian countries. Last year, the U.S. took in 84,995 refugee applications. Syria contributed to over 12,000 of these refugees. Although, after Trump was enacted into presidency and also enacting the executive order of the travel ban for Muslim-majority countries, these applications to America have decreased. In fact, we've gotten the lowest number. Next up, we have Sage talking to us about healthcare reforms.
Thanks, Devin. Today I am at Sacred Heart Hospital talking about healthcare reforms. The national issue healthcare reforms is being talked about across the country between neighbors, public figures like the president, and in the Senate. Our President Donald Trump, as he was a candidate for presidency, his position on Obamacare after months of promising to repeal it, Trump said after his victory that he'd consider keeping the most popular features, like allowing young people to stay on their parents' insurance until 28 and guaranteeing that people with pre-existing medical conditions can't be denied insurance. The Affordable Care Act makes sure that Americans get fair treatment by healthcare providers, helping make insurance more affordable to lower and middle class Americans and small business employers, offering new consumer protections, enforcing a lot of new rules that will help eliminate wasteful spending, and generally contains about 1,000 pages of reforms aimed at addressing the complex issues of American healthcare. When Trump took presidency, the American Health Care Act was set in place. The bill would scrap tax penalties for people who go without health insurance, roll back the state-by-state expansions of Medicaid, defund Planned Parenthood, and replace means-tested insurance subsidies with tax credits based mainly on a person's age. According to Ashley from JAMA Network, 63% of Republicans and 21% of Democrats think that repealing the ACA is a top priority. In March 2017, 49% of the public viewed the ACA favorably and 44% don't. As Abby in the New York Times says, an estimated 20 million more people got health care thanks to the Affordable Care Act and expanded services, but the Republicans used the collapse of the ACA as an argument for making the American Health Care Act more stingily. leaving the states more responsible. In Washington, Noam and Levely from the LA Times looks back at healthcare issues from 22 years ago. Coming off historical electoral gains, the GOP legislators scrapped much of the law while pledging to make health insurance more affordable and free to state residents. From, I don't know how to say this word, onerous government mandates. It didn't work out that way. The repeal left the state's insurance markets in shambles, sent premiums skyrocketing, and drove health insurance from the state. It took nearly 5 years to repair the damage.
Last up, we have Jenna talking to us about how models and celebrities affect our body image.
Thanks, Devin. I'm here at BYU University. In today's society, teens and young adults are struggling with their self-image. The growing use of social media is tainting the way that young people look at themselves. Photos of models and famous celebrities with their photoshopped bodies and airbrushed skin show up on their devices and plant new ideas of how the bodies should look. Social media makes seeing these photos easier and more frequent, as opposed to in the past, these photos would most likely only be found in magazines. These negative body images can lead to dangerous eating disorders, anxiety, and depression. You might not even realize it's affecting you. A recent study by BYU researchers shows that even some people that don't seem to have body image issues or don't feel the pressures of society can still be affected. The researchers used an MRI to look at the brain when people were shown images of complete strangers. When women saw the images of strangers that particular image was of a female that was overweight, the self-reflection part of the brain was triggered. These women were unconsciously being impacted by the fear of becoming obese. Men, however, did not show the same triggers of the brain. Though none of these women actually had eating disorders or any sign of body image issues, they are much closer to the mental illness than men. This is most likely because of the fact that women have a more common body expectation. The researchers state that when bulimic and anorexic women see these pictures of overweight women, they become distressed, similar to the women not dealing with these mental illnesses. This same part of the brains react. Men are still affected in this similar ways and can have all of these mental disorders, but their brains are not affected in the self-reflection part of the brain. Are you aware of how the body images portrayed are affecting you?
Join us again tomorrow night on WHAP Live at 5. Good night! But that's fine.
Interrupting your broadcast at WHAP Live at 5. As you may have heard, in 1951, the UN Convention relating to the status of refugees defines a refugee as a person fleeing or being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, violence, or membership of a particular social group. I'm here today to inform you about refugees locally in Spokane and statewide in Washington. You have heard what it is like on a global aspect, but here in the state of Washington, refugees are on the rise. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, in the year of 2015 alone, a total of 3,088 immigrants have been settled in Washington state. Reported by the Refugee Processing Center, since October 1st, 2016, Washington has obtained another 2,210 refugees. This is why the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services have declared to be ranked among the top 10 states resettling refugees in the U.S. There are many programs that have been put forth to help refugees in Washington state, such as TANF for cash and medical help for families in need, SNAP for food or electricity, and the RCA again for cash and families in need. There are programs in place for employment and language opportunities. In addition to those, there are health and youth services. The problem with many of these organizations is, although they do provide help and assistance, most of them have long and intensive applications to even have a chance of receiving assistance. After turning in your application, there is then a wait list. Once accepted, your application is reviewed, and after much time has passed, then you may have a chance of being accepted or turned down. Just repeat the application process again. The Washington Department of Social and Health Services has also stated that naturalization is a process by which U.S. citizenship is given to a legal immigrant after he or she fulfills the requirement established under the Immigration and Nationality Act. Once a refugee becomes a citizen, citizens have the right to vote, are free from deportation, can get assistance from the U.S., such as food stamps, temporary assistance to needy family, which is also TANF, and supplemental income. To become a U.S. citizen, an individual must learn basic U.S. history and civics and pass a written or oral exam given by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. The process takes approximately 12 to 18 months from date the application is sent to the date of the interview. In 2013, the Office of Refugee and Immigrant Assistance had about 17,200,000 to assist refugees throughout all 50 states. Those are dollars, by the way. It may sound like a significant number, but little is actually put in refugees' hands. For example, $3 million is put towards food, or an additional $3 million is for health screening. That is $6 million together. There are over 1 million refugees in the U.S. legally. In Washington state, a small amount of around 23,000 are able to naturalize every year. Just kidding. Right now, at this moment, with over 61,000 not able to. According to Refugees Women's Alliance, many thank Governor Jay Inslee for proclaiming that Washington will continue to be a state that welcomes those seeking refuge from persecution, regardless of where they come from or religion they practice. He said that after Trump new executive order with the Muslim ban and stuff like that, he said he doesn't really care if they're Muslim, then they're like, welcome to our state. In addition, the number of accepted refugees has decreased according to the law. Among all these states, only up to 50,000 refugees can be accepted this year. In 2015, REWA, or Refugees Women's Alliance, served over 11,000 refugees, ranging from counseling to schooling in men, women, and children refugees. Although that is a significant number, there are many more refugees waiting for assistance. Here locally, there's different programs such as World Relief and Spokane Cares. World Relief of Spokane, Washington works to provide resettlement services, citizenship services, education services, and much more. They work with local churches and are successful through donations and sponsors. Another organization, Spokane Cares, helps over 300 refugees a year. In the year of 2016 alone, 600 refugees were expected to migrate from their country, from persecution, etc., to Spokane. The population of refugees in Spokane, Washington is increasing and increasing every year. Thank you for your listening to this interruption. That's all.